Nothing to be nervous about. Welcome, welcome, electronic Buddha. I have to.
Electronic Buddha.
I had to call him out on that one in the comments when Rob did that. Rob's a funny guy. So
yeah, he seems like a good guy.
yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, this was a great idea. I'm glad you reached out to initiate it, if anything.
Mhm.
And I know that God, it's only been a month and change, I think, since the shock of this happened with Lou. But I'm really appreciative for what you're doing, because your stuff does take on it takes on a path and a level that I've kind of, how shall I say, cross paths with a little bit,
Mhm.
just on the, not so much the near death experience stuff, but the positive thinking, the being careful of who you surround yourself with.
Mhm.
The energy that you put out into the world, definitely could come back to you. And I always treat it like a tomato garden. Or any garden for that matter. You throw tomato seeds in it, tomatoes are going to come back. The soil doesn't care what you put into it; it's only going to give you what you put back. Put back from it. So those types of insights and what you've been doing has been a real a blessing, I should say, to the family and definitely to me. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and I know that with a lot of I guess you and I just kind of popped up after this happened, and what I was looking to do, and I didn't go into too much of who I am, because I wanted a lot of the focus to be on the concepts that I think could help people. And I'll give just a little bit of background, and then we'll get into what I'm doing now, probably later
Sure.
on, if that's okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
So there were a lot of interesting boxes that checked between you and I as I started watching your videos. Both from Jersey, you and I, both literally left Jersey and moved to Pensacola. Both educators at the college level, both metalheads. I mean, I was like, is this guy? What hospital were you born in, Will? Because
Right. We might have been switched at birth.
something crazy. It just blew my mind. And my background career wise has been teaching, and I was one of those guys that knew at age 14 that I wanted to teach.
Mhm.
And I even remember the day. It was March 9th, 1992, and I was in an algebra class with a crazy algebra teacher, Mr. Brady. I'll never forget him. And who the hell gets inspired by an algebra teacher? And I just remember 45 minutes of insanity by Mr. Brady, thinking, dude, that guy is insane and he's getting paid for it. I was like, that's what I want to do. So
Yeah.
I was lucky and fortunate, because the next 8 years of my life, I paid attention to every teacher that I had, and took notes and almost treated it like an apprenticeship,
Right.
where the good teachers that I had, and I had a lot of good ones and a lot of good professors, I absorbed and adopted some of their methods. And then I also had some bad
Right.
teachers too. And it showed me what the difference was between people who could connect with students
Sure.
because they wanted their students to succeed, rather than some of the darker side to this, where people go into this position knowing that it's a power position and that
Mhm.
they could steer people in one direction or another. And I saw the two sides to it, the dark and the light. And I always, fortunately for myself, were able to develop my craft based on what I had seen laid out before me in those years.
It's so
Um,
true. Yeah.
yeah. And so from there, I started a tutoring company while I was in college. Literally used to throw darts on a map every 9 months or so and move to a different city. Pensacola was the first one where that dart landed. And found myself in proprietary education at the career college level. And I followed that career path pretty much from adjunct to full time to program to director, to where I spent most of my time was dean of academic affairs for about 15 years.
Oh my goodness.
So yeah, it was quite the ride up, because I was only 28 when I got promoted to dean. So I had faculty like twice my age that I was supervising.
Yeah.
So it was a bizarre world to be in. But I don't know if you felt this from when you were teaching as well, but I know I did. Is I always I always got the notion that I got the better end of the deal because I always learned more from my students than I felt that they learned from me sometimes.
Right.
And
Right.
after 15 to 20 years of being in that industry, I did hit the proverbial burnout that
Mhm.
sometimes educators do go through, and decided to retire from that industry probably about 4 or 5 years ago, which coincided right with COVID. So
Right.
from that, I decided to take about 6 or 7 months to retire and then go into the finance field and get licensed in the finance field and help families with their finances on a basic level. So that was my career arc. I still do love teaching. This YouTube thing has been a little bit of a challenge in the sense that I'm a brick and mortar guy, and I do like the the physical presence of students to bounce ideas off and discussions because I'm
Right.
very Socratic in my nature.
Right.
So, but it's been a challenge that I'm glad that at least I've jumped into, and I'm just hoping that if it reaches the family, some core group, and then some people outside of that, that's fine. But I'm looking to try to cut through some of the fog at least a little bit, and help people out in its basic level.
Well, what is it that as you said, we have so much in common, and so many core traits must align for us to have those things in common. What is it that resonated with you about Lou? Because Lou wasn't exactly, I mean, he was abrasive,
Mhm.
he was rude,
Yep.
he was unpolished. Um, so and really that's probably my answer to this question, but what is it that drew you to this family, this community, this audience? What resonated with you?
That's a good question because I don't remember exactly how I found Lou,
Hmm.
other than self-educating just on basic investing because I was going through that edification process. Getting license helps, but you still have to stay on top of a lot of um, new things that come up, new developments, new
Right.
ideas, new strategies.
Right. And
And
retail traders certainly qualified as that in 2021.
yeah, sure,
It was
sure.
a phenomenon.
Yeah, it was a tsunami almost in a lot of ways, and I caught Lou at I had invested in AMC probably when it was I want to say maybe the $9 mark,
Hmm.
because in early 2021 I was looking for as we were coming out of the pandemic I was looking for value plays that weren't going to stay suppressed because of the pandemic for long, and
Right.
AMC was one of them. Carnival was another one, and I keep thinking Bed Bath and Beyond might have been another one.
Oh, sure.
And yeah, and literally just put money into I wasn't even watching it. I wasn't the guy that hits Google every 10 seconds. I put it in there and I don't know, it might have been like March. Might have been sooner than that. I can't remember. And then
Hmm.
it wasn't until like I want to say August or September, I decided to fire up my brokerage account just to see how it was doing. And I saw it was in the 40s or 50s after I bought it at 9. I was like, what the hell happened? Like there must have been a crest and a wave because I figured it was just a buy and hold until people started going back to the movies again, and
Right.
found out that there were different phenomena at stake that had nothing to do with market conditions. It was short sellers and getting into FTDs and things of that
Hmm.
nature. And Lou was the when I got into Lou, it might have been like fall of 2021 because there was a period that around that time that was much different than his earlier videos where he was lucid, sharp on top of it. He was almost like stoned, like when he would do the videos.
Right.
And I'm like, who is this guy and why is he generating so much buzz?
Right.
And but he'd always have some kind of lesson buried into the whole stoner motif to it. And then
Hmm.
I think as 2022 came along, he started coming out of that stoner phase and he was back to his lucid videos like he was early on. I have no idea what he went through around that time, but
Right.
he was part of my daily because he was not I wouldn't say he was doling out conspiracies. He was giving spoiler alerts.
Yeah.
He would say stuff, and then a month later, it would come true. So it came to my attention that this guy was connected, or he just had a lot of experience in the field and he could see trends before they happened. Um, I'm
I think that
only
was, yeah, that was my impression as well. I mean, I knew that he definitely had some inside friends.
yep.
But it did almost seem like a crystal ball, and it really does. It comes down to either pure experience, which
Mhm.
I feel like he kind of exuded,
Yeah.
street experience, as well as a couple of friends on the inside,
Yep.
I think.
Yep.
Yeah.
Definitely. And I realized I was learning and going through the edification process through him just
Mhm.
as much as any of the other books I read or anything along those lines. And
Right.
all of his penny stock suggestions, money, like
Hmm.
literally. So he was there producing for whoever his audience was, and I think he knew what he had created and what he had started. And he was a good guy and didn't want to see people screwed over. And that stuff sticks with you. If you have an ethical
Yeah.
backbone, you
Right.
recognize other people who do as well. And
Right.
yeah, I think that's why he became part of my daily, in a lot of ways.
Okay. Yeah. Solid. Well,
Yeah.
reciprocally, if just because this is going to go up on your channel, if
Mhm.
people aren't familiar with who I am, on YouTube, I go by the Electric Buddha. My name is Will. I'm a financial analyst for a three-letter agency. It sounds way more exciting than it is. It's not. But I'm a financial analyst, so I apply models of predictability and look for outcomes to protect taxpayer funds. But a lot of times I end up babysitting money and things like that. I monitor money movement. Prior to this, I did teach at the college level. I taught human psychology, which I find finance and human psychology marry each other very well.
Sure.
I'm a deep value investor. I look for opportunity wherever I can find it. What brought us together was our joint vision of Ripple as a company of cryptocurrency and digital assets going into a new economic everything, a new economic model, a new world. Um, I mean, we're not going into, we have already begun going into. So I've always been drawn to the cutting edge of technology. I started building, programming, and generally obsessed with computers back in the early 90s. Coming up, my dad actually, I asked him if I could have a computer, and I
Mhm.
might have been in sixth or seventh grade. And he took me to this rinky dink little computer shop, and we walked inside, and he asked, they were clearly friends. My dad was a township cop, he knew everybody. And this guy had a box for me, and he put it on the counter, and he said, your dad told me to hold this for you. And it was all these spare parts. And my dad said, if you can figure out how to put that together, that's a computer and you can have it. So
That's great.
I started, like, there was no real internet at the time, so I
Right.
just had these books. I remember I had the Jim Norton Guide to IBM PCs, and I would use that, and I was able to Frankenstein together this computer, and that process just really awoke something in me, and
Mm.
it changed the course of my life, and I'm still very into technology and computers, and that's why I think that's what led me into cryptocurrency back in, I think it was 2016 when I first started trading. I had never traded a stock in my life. I
Mhm.
started with crypto. And then of course with I started in the GameStop saga. And after GameStop had its spike,
Mhm.
um, I started looking for over shorted stocks, and AMC jumped out like a sore thumb. Got into that, and that's where Lou kind of came up in that equation, and just sort of being around people who hustle and people who make money. I recognized who Lou was, and how real he was, and
Yep.
and I enjoyed how unpolished he was, because those are the people that make money.
Yeah.
Um, my buddy and Al and I were building computers and selling them at flea markets for three times what we paid for them. We were building websites I was building websites for companies when I was in eighth and ninth grade. Um, and like random strangers coming over to the house, coming up and sitting on my futon in my room while I like asked them, okay, what do you want your website to do? And a day later, I gave them like this. I mean, it was probably like a GeoCities tier shitty HTML website,
Right.
but anyway, that was my background. So
You were providing value in the marketplace to willing buyers, right?
I certainly was, and made a good amount of money doing
Yeah.
so. Yeah.
Fantastic. That's awesome. Yeah. Yeah. I was, and to be honest with you, it's ironic because I was the anti-tech guy. I was not a fan of the internet when it came out. Matter of fact, I went through 4 years of high school. When I tell people this, who are a little bit younger than me, I went through 4 years of high school without ever logging on to the internet because it wasn't, I
Hmm.
graduated in 95,
Right.
and,
Right.
the history of the internet is interesting because I can see now as it comes full circle that we when the internet launched in August of 91 to what we know it today, and then the World Wide Web was accessed through the first browser in April 93, that's what allowed common people to get into the everyday of searching for information and being part of that World Wide Web that they could build upon. Crypto and the ISO coins and XRP specifically were in that like 1991 to 1993 realm of where it is, and we're about
Yeah.
to launch into that next section of the future of payments with this. So the history of the internet, particularly on the American end, is a very good analogy for where we are, and for those people who had Microsoft stock or Dell stock around that time before it exploded. Those were the ones that made the most money as the
Hmm.
wave tested until the late 90s. The
Right.
same way, if you're able to get in for 50 cents and 10 cents and 5 cents with some of this stuff, you're going to see that same crest and wave by the end of this decade. So yeah, it's
Right.
a fascinating, history. They said history doesn't repeat, but it does rhyme.
Right.
This is how I feel it's going, just based
Well,
on that.
and I think jumping into that, I think some of the frustration that some of the family members may have is if you came into value investing and stock trading and things like that in 2020, 2021,
Mhm.
then you might be used to rapid price increases, rapid squeezes, and XRP is like a purgatory. I mean, it
Mhm.
really is, and trading sideways. I mean, we've been in the 52 channel for a couple of weeks now. I'm looking at it now. And so is Bitcoin, Ethereum. All the majors are just sitting in that channel. It could seem very boring, but the the patience that's required and the understanding of the transition that's taking place that you're talking about right now, um, it's so monumentally massive
Mhm.
that if you're able to, and I think that's why we're doing this. That's why we're trying to hold this group together and say you've got to stick through this purgatory. What's coming is historic. We're talking about a complete global shift, and you're holding the new currency.
Right.
You're holding a live wire, but nobody's thrown that switch yet to run the juice through it.
Excellent analogy. Yeah, and it's odd because I, I love the bear markets and the sideways trading.
You do.
It's discount city. I mean,
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
the only way I look at it. How many people, when they were stuck behind that wall, buying in at AMC in the 60s, and then watching it drop tick 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 50, 40, 30, said, I wish I could have bought in when it was $3, $4, $5.
It's true.
And we're into that. Hey, now's the time to get the plan together. I
Right.
did even a video on that called dollar cost averaging, which is ultimately you want to buy at this time. You want to set yourself up with the plan to jump in at the sideways trading and the dips before it goes on that run. The runs are exciting because the dopamine hits, I guess.
Right. Right.
Stock market, keep pressing, or the casino, keep pressing the button on the when you pull the handle down. What the hell is it? The slot machine, right?
Right.
Uh,
Right.
but but it's the frustration is putting the quarters into the slot machine to build up that wealth before the big one hits, and
Absolutely.
Yeah, we're probably not going to see these prices again, you know, based on when this switch does get thrown. And
I don't think we'll ever see this again. No.
no,
And
no,
and it's almost like it's almost like you're gonna keep letting me do this. You're gonna keep letting me trade you 50 cents for something that is worth far more than that. You're gonna keep letting me buy, whether or not, even if XRP were to only reach its all-time high again of $3, you're selling me a $3 bill for 50 cents.
right. It seems like
So
a no-brainer.
right.
Yeah, and the inflation video, which I didn't get to do yet. The big thing about this is that you are holding a perpetually depreciating asset when you hold a
Correct.
dollar bill in your hand.
Correct.
So hyperinflation hasn't hit yet, but when it has in other countries, people were getting rid of that currency to get anything of value that they could exchange and barter for something else. Could be food to eat. You never know.
Yeah.
But you're basically holding. I want people to equate this idea of you're holding a dollar bill the same as if you were holding an AMC share after APE was issued. You saw what happened. It went tank, 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 reverse split, even tank, 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 even further. And if you actually do reverse split prices for AMC, it's at 30 cents right now. So to get rid of it, to get something that would be more valuable that you can churn into something else, keep in mind that dollars are currency, they're not money. They can control
I think
vast
we're
mechanisms of the and they get their arms and everything, and rather than hold on to it.
yeah, and I think we broke up a little bit there. Sorry, it's the realities of the internet.
Yeah.
No, it's absolutely devastating what happened to people in AMC. And the worst part about it is, and I think it's the thing that I respected most about Lou, and I think it's why you and I are trying our hardest to carry his mission, is that people, first of all, you weren't welcome in the stock market to begin with. You weren't supposed to be there. And then you certainly, just by buying and holding a stock, you were able to squeeze shorts because it was a system that wasn't designed for actual supply and demand, value investing. It wasn't meant for any of that. It was meant to make Wall Street money. It was a game that you weren't supposed to be a part of, and you weren't playing it the way you were meant to play it. And then as everybody lost money criminally, and not due to, it's not like you played a game of chess and you screwed up and you lost the game. That's not true. The game was rigged against you. And the referee sided with the cheating player. That it might have shaken out people out of investing and believing in themselves. And then you deal with something like XRP, which is not that dissimilar in that you have the interests of Wall Street utilizing a government agency to try to kneecap a company and try to stop their progress and to try and hold them down. A $2 billion fine. Come on.
It's so stupid.
It's so petty. It's clearly petty. It's clearly a kid who's not as fast as another kid running around a track in gym class, so he grabs onto the back of his shirt and tries to pull him back or tries to trip him. That's right. And this is the onus on this family, is you've been burned once and you're in another situation that it's not the same, but like you said, it rhymes. And it requires you to have faith and to hold on.
Yeah, and that's the challenging part of it. But if we can, this is where the foundational videos come in that I was doing, was just trying to get the plan together. And if there is a time where you don't believe in it anymore, then you get out of the play. That's understood in any type of investment.
Sure.
But the goal is that when you're in the accumulation stage and you're only you're you're coming from meager means and you're just throwing a couple $100 at this per month, stick to the plan to build them up. Next thing you know, you've got a couple thousand of this thing, and you make 2 to 3 plays, boom, boom, boom. You've now actually set up
Absolutely.
yourself financially. Yeah, that's
Absolutely.
textbook financial advising is how I call it.
And that's going to be that's going to be a challenging psychological state to be in, is that when XRP rips into $1, $2, $3 channels, things like that, people are going to see a pretty sizable return. And
Yep.
they're also going to see pullbacks and all these things. Pardon me. But just like we saw H bar rip up 85%, and there was that instinctive I'm not going to sell because I can handle this, because that's what AMC required, was this up and down hold stuff.
Mhm.
People also have to recognize when there's an opportunity to take some profit and move that into the next investment and continually roll that snowball downhill.
Yep. Yeah, you called it laddering, I believe.
Yeah, laddering, not seeing that you only have one shot. Like I'm only selling XRP at $1,000 when I'm a multimillionaire. You don't have to do that.
Right.
You can get to that level if you ladder yourself and you say, okay, XRP is ripping, it's at $5. I bought this at 50 cents, and I let off X amount of my investment, and now I've captured that return. If it pulls back, I've already got a piece of that pie. Now, with that piece of the pie, I'm going to put that into this asset. Continue.
Yep. Yeah. It's moving money is how you stay afloat. If you're not growing, you're shrinking. That's kind of the rule of business in general.
Right.
Yeah, and it's definitely pertinent for this play. And I tell people to think of it like real estate. You don't buy a house for 400 grand with the hopes to sell it for 200 grand a year later.
Right.
You want to do the opposite. So why would you treat this type of investment any different? I'm going to buy when I see a run. No, you buy when you see a run. You're not going to buy as many, and your profit won't be nearly as magnanimous as you wanted it to be. So
sure. And
Yeah,
crypto follows a very predictable cycle. The 4-year bear, 2 years of a bearish cycle, 2 years of a bullish cycle. It's I mean, you could set your watch to it, and it's just that people came into the bull cycle of 2021 where, I mean, you couldn't miss. You could throw money at any coin and make money. And we're getting there. Our current position is equivalent to 2020. Right? So we haven't seen the full scale. I mean, people, I know they got to make money with these clickbait type news articles, but they're like, all right, the halving didn't do anything. And it's like, are you out of your mind? The halving hasn't even affected the markets yet. Give it time, But
yeah, and I think the last halving, it was it April 2020? I think that the peak was November 2021. So
it took time. Right. And the price at that time was between $7,000 and $8,000.
Yeah, and I mean, that opened my eyes to it. I'm sure we all have the story that we heard. And my first intro to crypto was I had a group of investors that I was hanging around with and involved with back in 2011, talking about Bitcoin at $2.78. You know what that is. And I was accumulating precious metals at the time, and the only reference point that I had was that this Bitcoin thing that they're talking about is digital gold.
Right.
Maybe they were using that as a metaphor or a euphemism, but I said, why would I buy digital gold when I'm buying the physical stuff? And I believe it was Jeff Berwick from the Dollar Vigilante. I think it was his group. And he's probably from my economic circles back then when I was teaching it. And I went to his first Anarcho Fest in Mexico in 2015. And it was, how to free yourself and live the permanent traveler lifestyle. And he had a whole section on crypto. And Bitcoin was $250 by then, and they still couldn't bring me to put the money down for it. I was like, this is interesting, but I'm still doing with precious metals, and not that my precious metals are collecting dust, but I can see returns would have been much greater had I been a little more open-minded back then.
Well,
So
and that's okay. I think that at that time there certainly wasn't the foundation that we have now.
mhm,
And that's what I hope people can pick up on, is that all around us, I mean, news articles, everything from BRICS I mean, every central bank around the world are speaking crypto.
yep,
So it's like you didn't have that back then.
yeah,
It was magical internet money. It was an experimental stage back
yep,
then, for sure. But that experimental phase is past now, and now it's very clear the direction that the global economy is going. I mean, the BRICS summit for this year, I was just reading an article that the dominant topic is de-dollarization,
yeah, yeah,
to get away from the American dollar. We just saw, I haven't been able to find articles on it since, that Russia seized $440 million of JP Morgan's money that was
yeah.
stored in, right.
I heard about that. Yeah, I mean,
Right.
I
This
think,
is economic war that is all, I mean, the war drums are already thumping.
yep. And here we
So,
go. I think
right.
I don't know if Putin's just trolling at this point, or if he's seriously, you know, giving us a taste of our own medicine. When
Right.
the barrel of the gun is pointed back in our direction, it doesn't feel so nice. And
I don't I believe it is. I believe it's a level of response. I mean, the 440 million, the justification was you seized Russian assets and you gave them to Ukraine, so we're seizing your assets. It is a bit of a tit for tat kind of thing, but it is going in that direction. And let's not forget that when we look at the BRICS uh, agenda, um, Saudi Arabia really relied on us and our, forget politics. It's just us saying that we're getting away from petro and we're going green.
yep,
That's a direct threat to their economy, and they responded
yep.
likewise. They
And I
said
and I
then we're de-dollarizing.
and I can't tell if it's on purpose, or, the current commander in chief, if he was on this call with us, could you imagine us having a lucid conversation about the perils of the US dollar by doing what he's doing? No, not even close on that end. So his handlers, whoever have to be behind the scenes on this, I don't know if they're even competent enough to know what's at stake, or they just don't care and they're trying to push for it. It's a bizarre world to be in. I'll say that much.
I don't, we'd be purely speculating whether or not it's intentional or not. What it certainly seems to me as an analyst is a controlled demolition
Yeah.
of the American dollar, with the speculation being the ushering in of a digital currency. It almost gets drowned out because we say it so much: central bank digital currency. We say
Mhm.
that so much that I think it kind of loses its effect. But if you were to put a gun to my head and you were to say, what is your analysis of just the information in front of you, I would say that there's an intentional demolishing of value to the American dollar, so that the central bank digital currency can replace it,
Yep. Yeah.
and putting the pain on American shoppers, to the point where I really think people are just going to drop to their knees and they're going to welcome a new currency if it means they're going to be able to not pay $300 for a basic grocery order.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. And that's, this is the quick fix where it really goes quickly, as opposed to, what the central bank has been doing since 1913 anyway, which is slowly drip drip, getting the dollar to lose its value over time.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
Yeah. I
right.
don't think any of this is by accident. I kind of have to agree with you on
I,
that.
I I I don't think that it can be. I don't believe that. Um, you and I are able to see so clearly, yet the powers to be aren't.
Right,
It just.
right.
But we're also talking about a system where the head of the United States Treasury received 4 times her public servant salary in speaking fees to hedge funds.
Mm,
So
yep.
it's this is the system that we're dealing with, and that's why there's definitely some pushback in the cryptocurrency community for those of us that support XRP, because we are facilitating central bank digital currencies, and sort of we're kind of playing ball,
Right.
versus decentralizing and everything like this. um and maybe that's the case, but the way that I see it is, you have to position yourself to win, and this is the direction that things are going in. So
Right. Right. And there's no martyrs in this field, I guess you could say.
right, right.
There's my take on it has always been that money makes good people better, or it makes bad people worse.
Yeah, I
And
think it unleashes what was already there. Yeah.
yep,
If you're
yep,
a kind person, it's going to allow you to be even more kind. It's going to allow you to do more kind things. And if you're someone who enjoys dominating and power over other people, then it's just going to facilitate that. Right.
yep,
Right.
yeah, and that's where it goes there. So,
Right.
yeah, may you live in interesting times. We surely do.
We sure
So,
do. We sure do.
yeah,
Yeah.
let me go through. Yeah, and you mentioned this Secretary of Treasury Janet Yellen. She was the one visiting China, advising them not to side with Russia against the Ukraine, and teaming up and blah blah blah, while we're passing $95 billion plans to prop up, smaller
Ukraine.
countries. Yeah, yeah, the
Right.
Ukraine and Taiwan and Israel.
Right.
You
Right.
know, I mean,
Right.
this is a woman that, did she fall off the moron tree and then hit every branch on the way down, not realizing what the hell she was talking to China about? I mean, it's almost we become a laughing stock just because of that on the world stage. It's so bizarre. I don't get it.
I have no disagreement on that. And
Yeah.
I think that when opportunity, I think a lot of players around the world see this as an opportunity,
Yeah.
a hole in our defense right
Chink in
now.
the armor. Yep.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
take advantage of it. I was thinking of like what kind of free market solution would be ideal for this. And, if you think of, the United States has a decent amount of gun manufacturers.
Hmm.
We're definitely business oriented on that. What would the harm be of sending diplomatic teams to these smaller countries, like Ukraine, as an example, and get the encourage maybe gun rights for their citizens, and open up trade agreements with the U.S. gun manufacturers, and let their citizens just buy our guns directly. It would help the economy. It wouldn't waste tax money to the tune of $95 billion. And it usually will stabilize smaller countries, because bigger countries are less likely to invade when there's a gun hiding under every blade of grass of the country that they're going into. So, there
I
a
I
lot of
think I'm sorry to interrupt you. I'm familiar with that philosophy, and I can understand it, but I think that may be about to be tested.
well, yeah. Yikes. And
Yeah.
tested
Yeah.
coming our way, or tested going their way.
Coming our way.
Yeah.
I'm greatly well, I guess we're kind of deviating away from economics, but it does concern me that there seems to be a lack of concern about the inflow at certain borders
Yep.
that does concern me. So I guess that thought that nobody would ever think to invade America because there'd be a gun behind every blade of grass. It's like, well, uh, perhaps somebody's about to put that to the test.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. And God Almighty, that's where I
Right.
encourage everybody to definitely protect themselves and their family, at least on that end.
And
And
that's it. And I think that's what we're seeing. I think we're seeing basically a cyclone of major catalyst changes happening simultaneously.
mm,
That all are going to, I mean, all by themselves could be in terms of economics could be monumentally changing. But when you incorporate a world war, when you incorporate the collapse of an economic system, when you incorporate uh, consolidation of power, I mean, when all of these things are happening simultaneously, um, it's it's staggering.
Yeah.
And then it's frustrating too when you see a blue collar working hard member of this community that is putting what they're able to put into precious metals and into digital assets like Bitcoin or XRP, and they're struggling to put groceries on the table, and then they're watching their investment trade sideways. Then you've got people like you and I that are trying our hardest to like sound the trumpet and say, just hold on. This is
Yep.
happening in this way. Well, that's where we find ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely. Yeah. It's Yeah. I guess I don't want to get into this lulled scenario of where, the world that I either grew up in the '80s versus the world I became a professional in the 2000s before the real estate crash.
Mhm.
You know, we tend to romanticize it as the simpler time when things were going well, but we also, I think, from our standpoint, we also saw the potential of what we could have done by working hard, starting a business, and setting ourselves up financially. And then
Sure.
we've watched a lot of people who care very little for that blue collar worker do everything they can to yank the rug out from underneath everybody. Um,
Absolutely.
yeah, it's unfortunate and sad because it didn't have to be that way. We saw the every cynic was once a disillusioned idealist, and
That's one of my favorite quotes. That's
yeah,
Carlin, I
Carlin,
believe.
yep,
Yeah,
it's
yep,
so true
yeah.
because we saw idealistically what the world could have become if we just educated people and left them alone to figure out their own devices.
It is a bummer, but one of my favorite works of literature is All Quiet on the Western Front.
Oh
And
yeah, I've never actually read it. Actually, yeah,
it's quite depressing, but
yeah, sure,
it reminds me a lot of that Carlin quote. Every idealist inside every cynic is a disappointed idealist.
idealist, yeah,
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 yeah.
it's true.
Um, I hate to be rude, but I actually I think I'm running short on time because I have an obligation coming up.
Sure, yeah,
Uh, but I hope you don't mind. I would love to have another chat again.
yeah. We could do part two. We
That
have
sounds good.
all sorts all sorts of things to I was wondering where the road was going to take it. I was like, this could go on into spots we didn't anticipate, but
I can shoot you an email, give you a couple of topics I'm interested in, and whenever maybe this weekend if you have some time, we could do it again. We're set up to do it whenever.
sure, yeah, sure, I'll list this one as like part zero, and that way that'll
Yeah,
who knows where the rest of them is going to go, but
that'll
Will,
work.
Will, it was a pleasure. I'm glad we got the time at least tonight, if anything, and there will be more coming from me as well, and I always look forward to your stuff as well too.
Beautiful, my friend. Enjoy your evening, and I will see you in the next one.
Thanks, you too. Take it easy.
Take care.
Bye.